This episode has been brought to you by DiceyGoblin.com, online board game retailer, where every board game is an award-winning board game. Hey everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. We're bringing you the Forbidden Island review today. If you're not familiar with my videos in the past, I don't do a rules explanation for my review. There's a separate video for that. You can look that up. It's going to be the How to Play Forbidden Island. However, it should be in the playlist, which I believe is over here if you're watching on YouTube. There's other videos I've done, gameplay and unboxing, that sort of thing. So be sure to check those videos out. I would like to mention that that Forbidden Island is available at DiceyGoblin.com, which is my sponsor. Among other things, they donate a portion of their proceeds to nerdy charities. Or nerdy fundraisers, I should say. So that's pretty cool. Be sure to check them out. Let's get right into the review. All right, as usual, we'll start with originality. Now, Pandemic is Matt Leacock's first game. Forbidden Island came after that, and it has been compared as a Pandemic light. And I think that's a fair comparison. There are a lot of mechanisms in this game that are very similar to Pandemic. The flood deck and the treasure deck is equivalent to the disease deck or infection deck and player decks in Pandemic. You have the Water Rises cards in Forbidden Island, which is comparable to the Epidemic cards in Pandemic. There's a lot of comparisons like that. You've got various character roles, all that sort of stuff. Granted, the character roles, that's something you see in a lot of games, but so I think that comparison is a fair one. This is certainly a different game. It definitely has a different feel to it. It definitely is lighter than Pandemic as well. Hence the Pandemic light. I don't know that you can really say there's a whole lot of originality in this game other than the theme. I don't know that there was a lot that needed to change. There's obviously differences in the rules between this and Pandemic. Anybody who's played both games can see that. With all that being said, I'm going to give this game a 0.75 out of 2 for originality, just because it does so heavily borrow from Matt Leacock's first game. That doesn't make it a bad game. And we'll go along. You'll see what I think of it as we get to the end of the review. But it definitely does not have a strong original feel to it. It's very derivative of that first game. Moving on to aesthetics. With aesthetics, I have to say I really like what they've done in this game a lot. The tiles, the artwork on the tiles is beautiful. It really gives this feel of some sort of exotic island that has all these different locations on it. And I believe the Phantom Rock is one that's kind of like the skull cave thing, and then you've got a desert, you've got a lagoon, and ultimately these are just different tiles. But as far as what they look like, they are really cool, very easy to distinguish. The only ones that are ever when you just glance at them that you might get confused would be the tiles, the two different tiles for the treasure tokens, and the reason for that is you got Temple of the Sun, Temple of the Moon. Well, it's two sides of the same coin if you think about it, and so it makes sense that those tiles are going to be similar in how they look. And the same can be said for the other treasure tiles as well, I think. But that makes sense though, so I don't mind that because it makes perfect sense. The treasure cards are cool. The treasure items themselves, the actual treasures. And this goes a little bit into components, I believe, but they are nice, chunky pieces, and I like the design of them. I like the way they look. I think they look really, really neat. That's the first thing when you open the box, your eyes are immediately drawn to those treasures, and it's a nice little touch that it's not that you're just, I don't know, they could have just given you tokens, but instead they gave you these plastic pieces that are really cool to look at and kind of add a little bit to it. So aesthetics, I'm going to give the game a 2.7 out of 3. A very high score for aesthetics. Moving on to components. The tiles in this game are nice, sturdy cardboard. There's no bend in them. They are going to last. They're really, really nice. The cards, on the other hand, are very thin, and I knew immediately I needed to sleeve them. Any amount of shuffling of these cards without them being sleeved, you're going to start getting nicks on the cards. You're going to start getting little things that'll kind of be tells as far as what's coming up. And maybe that doesn't bother you. Maybe you don't pay enough attention. It's one of those things where once I recognize something on a card, then I'm going to see it every time it comes up. And it's hard for me to ignore that. So I sleeved them because, like I said, I'd say they're built the same way the pandemic cards are built, which, I said back in that review that they were pretty thin. Or I believe that was in the Pandemic in the Lab review. However, ultimately, that's something that isn't a huge problem. I do think that the pawns are a bit small. They're certainly smaller than the pandemic pawns, and again, they are just pawns. So I think that from a component standpoint, those would have been better served as either meeples or miniatures. Moving on to the treasures themselves, I like them a lot. I think they're real sturdy plastic. They're chunky. They're nice. I like the design of them, as I said, during the aesthetics. But as far as their durability, I have no doubt that the treasure items are going to last. They're not going to break. The least sturdy of them probably is maybe the earth one, because it's kind of like on a stand, but even that one feels very sturdy. Like you're not gonna have any problems. Or maybe the water chalice. Either way, not gonna have any problems. They're gonna last. They're not gonna break. You're not gonna have any issues there. The insert for the box is very functional, which is always a plus. I hate non-functional. Plat Hat Games is a bad habit of putting in inserts. They make great games, but their inserts are garbage usually. In the case of this one, Forbidden Island, the insert is actually really, really nice. Has a spot for everything, which is contrary to even Pandemic. Pandemic had a insert that was whatever. Wasn't really a whole lot of point to it. So overall, I like the components. 3.1 out of 4 is what I'm going to give the components for the game. Next, moving on to thrill factor. How much fun is this game when you're playing it? I really like how tense this game can be. Whether you start down on novice, which the first couple times you play it could be a pretty big challenge, all the way up to legendary, it's got that wide range so you can determine how difficult it's going to be. It is very, very tense when you start seeing the island, everything covering up. You're struggling to consolidate cards in order to get the matches that you need to claim the treasures, while at the same time, you only have 3 actions, so you got to use some of those actions to shore up tiles to make sure the island doesn't sink beneath your feet. So tense. Not a whole lot of decisions to make because there's only 2 main actions, and then the trading the cards and then claiming the treasure. So 4 total actions in the game that you can do, but you still have to make good decisions about which tiles you're going to save, which cards you're going to share, and all of that lends itself to a very tense game, especially as you play in the higher difficulties. So that tension leads to some really thrilling finishes for the game. I know that I just introduced this one to my main game group. I've mainly been playing with my daughter and my wife a little bit, but I'm introduced to one of my main game groups, and they loved it right off the bat. It was a close one right down to the wire, and being able to see that excitement come from the game on the very first play without having to worry about, are we getting the rules right? That's pretty cool, I think. And so for thrill factor, 2.4 out of 3. So that brings us to gameplay, which is the big category. Obviously gameplay is one of the most important things in a game. And for me, this game brings the kind of gameplay you need in a gateway cooperative game. It brings it's a tense gameplay with some good decisions to be made that don't burn somebody's brain out, even if they don't normally play games. The first time they realize the detriment of having the flood cards flip back over on top of that pile, so that the cards that you've been trying to shore up are now going right back underwater. that's kind of one of those aha moments the first time somebody sees that happen, especially if they're a new gamer. It's a pretty cool moment, and then it brings you into this cooperative gameplay experience that maybe somebody hasn't experienced before without making you, oh man, I know that there was one time I introduced Pandemic to some people, and Pandemic's not the most difficult game in the world, but if you've never played board games before, there's a lot of choices to be made in that game, and it can feel overwhelming pretty quick. This one keeps it tense without feeling overwhelming, I think, and that's the key. That's what makes it such a great gateway game. My daughter, who is not quite old enough to really truly enjoy Pandemic and be able to make some of the choices in that, loves this game, and asked to play this game repeatedly. So that makes it a great family game. The gameplay is perfect for that. It's perfect for newcomers, and at the same time is something that a gamer, somebody who plays games all the time, can still enjoy the decisions to be made and can still enjoy the tension in the game. So for gameplay, I'm giving this a 4 out of 5. And what that brings us to for a total score is 76.1%, which makes this very solid good game, right there in my good game bracket there in the 70s. I highly recommend this for anybody who's looking for a entry-level game, anybody who maybe is trying out a cooperative game for the first time, anybody that has kids. I really think that this has a wide range of people it can fit. The only thing maybe you wouldn't want to do is if all of you are big-time gamers, maybe you want to go up to Forbidden Desert, which I have not played before, or even Pandemic. So, and of course, there's a whole variety of other cooperative games. So anyway, that's my review, 76.1%. It's a really good score. I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel, please subscribe. Find me on Twitter at boredonlineboardoffline. I'm on Board Game Blender every now and then. And until next time, if you're bored online, board offline.